So we'll keep an eye on earnings. At the moment, nothing to worry about, as you'll see in this market update. Financials are going to do well because if the economy's doing well and there's lots of mergers and acquisitions, IPOs, stock market at all-time highs. Guess what you want to do when the stock market is at all-time highs? I have friends who are investment bankers. I've actually got probably my best friend. Um, he was at Lehman Brothers. Before that, he was at JP Morgan when ebookers was floated. So we're talking .com era flotations, and clicks a button and turns to another friend of mine, Dinesh Damager, the founder of ebookers, and says, well, basically there you are. You're now worth 800 million in your bank account. We've sold your shares and that's money goes to you. That's what it's like. That's how it feels. I have other friends who floated companies. My point being, when the markets are like this, you are in a rush to float and get those stock out because you're going to get a windfall. Okay. Energy is supposed to do well. Drill, baby, drill, basically being the point. We'll have a look at some of that. Not as convinced on that as. So here's the thing. There's a lot of commentators talking about Trump trades who haven't got a bloody clue. I'll tell you a very good way you're going to find out what a Trump trade is later in this webinar, and what isn't, and what claims to be by smartasses who just, again, a lot of clueless people. When I explain what it is, it should become self-evident. You go, oh yeah, okay. It's not me waiting for Donald Trump, and that is the New York Stock Exchange. Obviously, Elon now in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, as in Dogecoin. At some point, this US government will issue a cryptocurrency, I believe. And I think what they'll do is a bit like those Patriot bonds in the Second World War. It could be used to pay for a lot of paying down the national debt without, and here's the beauty, without it being a loan. They're not borrowing money. They're not refinancing the national debt, basically. They'll be democratizing it. Why do I say that? Well, because usually if I've thought of something, somebody else somewhere has thought of it as well. I've got to remember to take this. Funnily enough, I'm doing an event on investing tomorrow in Parliament. My driving license, I've got to take that. Unfortunately, it's not open to guests, as it were. It's a closed event. Otherwise, I would have invited Great Investments Program people, I'm afraid. But it just shows the amount of stuff going on about entrepreneurship and investment. Today, I was at LinkedIn headquarters to talk about it. Tomorrow, I'm in Parliament, and then I've got to go to the Department for Business and Trade, looking at, again, investments, exporting, and so on. I'm seeing a lot of energy being capitalized into heat and light, good stuff. Okay, so as you know, I've bought some Tesla. Hopefully you saw that on Telegram. If you didn't, just reiterating that. There was a Tesla trade structure. I will show that in this again. He's this time looking for people who are both competent and loyal. Last time he had people who are competent but disloyal, or loyal people who are just completely not competent. In fact, that 4-year break has been the best thing that could have happened for him, because it allowed him to think how he's going to do things this time round, and it looks a hell of a lot more competent. You've got Vivek Ramaswamy, you've got Elon Musk, you've got Elon Musk's best lieutenants of his companies like SpaceX and the Boring Company going into government to shake things up and move things. We've never seen anything like that in Britain. The closest we ever got was maybe the odd great and good person sitting around a table occasionally saying to government, you should do this, like a Dyson going, oh, I've got an idea, and then buggering off to Singapore. Half-assed, half-baked efforts. Okay, or you had Dominic Cummings with his carrier bag going, yeah, I want to do this. We had Dominic Cummings, they've got Elon Musk. Who do you think is going to get stuff done? The guy builds rockets. It's a pretty difficult engineering problem to solve. You can engineer the government. They're going to simplify it a lot. As I've explained to people before, Donald Trump wants 3 things. First of all, he wants to be known as the greatest president ever, but I'm not sure he can get that over, say, Abraham Lincoln. But certainly since the Second World War. To do that, he knows economics. He's got to cut the national debt. Not just the deficit, the national debt. That's a big ask. Okay. Secondly, he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, so Middle East solved once and for all. And I used to work in the US Congress. My specialist topic in politics at university was US politics, which is why I was in the US Congress. And America is a deeply religious country, and the evangelical Christians who are now driving it want the Middle East problem solved in favor of Israel. But this time, there's no brakes on Israel. Now, you might think you don't get the Nobel Prize for killing women and children, Peace Prize. Well, he wants it, and we'll see if he can get it. The third thing is he wants to be a trillionaire, and that's going to come through the stock market. Okay, whether you loathe the man and loathe the policies, I'm speaking completely apolitically. I am not saying whether it's good or bad, the methods of what they're going to do, other than translating into the stock market. Okay, corporation tax. Now, this is interesting. They said they're going to cut it straight away. I'm going to cut it. Why? Because you've got a bunch of business and they want growth. In America, they go for growth. In Europe, they go for capping inflation. Economic policies in Europe are directed primarily towards capping inflation. And if you get growth, fantastic. We might talk a lot about growth. The Germans, for instance, who run Europe, remember the Weimar Republic and ridiculous levels of inflation. That's in their economic psyche. For the UK, it's the oil crisis, the 70s, inflation bad. That is the key focus. Not until the 1980s, arguably, did Britain start even knowing what the word entrepreneur meant. And that meant that inflation is the key thing. How do we protect what we've got and it doesn't get whittled away, as opposed to how do we make more and rule the world? That Britain has long gone, a couple hundred years ago probably. So what you have in America is we'll cut corporation tax, get the state out of your business, and pressure the Fed to lower interest rates. What we had in the UK, clearest dichotomy I've ever seen between the two governments, probably, actually, I'm trying to think, even in the 1970s perhaps was when there was a dichotomy between US and UK, but not since, because Reagan had Thatcher. So there hasn't been this divergence of economic policy to the greatest extent that I've seen, which means that the two economies and the two stock markets are going to diverge more than ever. Because what we said, our government said, rightly or wrongly, is we want wealth redistribution. People with assets are not working people, therefore those assets should not be transmitted into their families and through their families intergenerational wealth. Society is more important than the individual family, which is very left-wing socialist philosophy, and therefore higher inflation, and we want to keep corporation tax at 25% for the next 5 years, which was spun into a positive. It's actually a negative because it used to be 19% until the Tories messed it up and pushed it up to 25. Stupid. But anyway, so if you're left of centre, wonderful. Give your assets to the state will redistribute them in the form of, I guess, missiles sent to Ukraine. But in the US, it's, we're not going to be spending all that money all those places. We want it in America, and we're lowering corporation tax. Good for the stock market. Good for the stock market. Not good if you're a woman who wants control over her body. My thesis, when I was working in Congress, the thesis I was working on was on the impact of abortion on US politics and selection of Supreme Court justices, specifically Justice Breyer, who was elected at that time to the, appointed rather, to the US Supreme Court. So I appreciate what abortion means in terms of this. So it's not good for a lot of people, illegal migrants. This is not good. Okay, but in terms of the stock market, this is good. We'll talk about inflation in a second. Well, actually, no, it's all right now. Inflation will be capped to some extent because of a strong dollar. Why is there a strong dollar? People are buying dollars. Why are they buying dollars? Well, the Americans are going for growth, so hell, let's go into their economy. Secondly, they've made clear you better be reshoring or you better have a base in the United States. Okay, if you want to do business here, that's the angle it's going into. Tariffs is a reflection of that. These two things, you might think, add to inflation. Strong dollar and tariffs. Well, actually, strong dollar doesn't. It puts a cap on inflation because it makes demand for American goods elsewhere in the world that much more expensive. So it tempers demand. Good, because if the other things are inflationary, you want some things which are deflationary. Also tempers wage growth. Why? Because if you've got a firm where your products, because the dollar's gone up, have become more expensive, your argument to your employees through the unions is we can't give you a wage rise because in actual fact, we've got less demand for our products. Our products have gone up in price without us getting the benefit of the profits. because we're still getting $100 for the products, but it's costing a Chinese person 20% more because of the strong dollar. So that should temper things. The tariffs will put up prices. However, Americans can substitute away from a lot of those Chinese goods. It's basically an attack on China, but some of the European goods apparently. And the idea there is, well, that'll dampen the enthusiasm. So it's not all growth, and that's good because you don't want inflation to get carried away anyway, because you want to keep that on hold. That'll probably stay stable. If that's stable, this keeps going up. Peace dividend, animal spirits is what Keynes talked about. It's that X factor of getting people excited. You saw how excited entrepreneur in chief Elon Musk was. You are going to have a bloke cheerleading for his economy, and he's the world's richest person. The animal spirits amongst entrepreneurs in America is going to be huge. And also, guess what? He owns X. He talks a lot on X. You're going to get that communication of that positivity. That boosts the American spirit. When I was reading US politics, some of the books that you're reading are the ones from the founding times of the nation, when when they were talking about why America is exceptional, what the entrepreneurial spirit of those people is. That exists, and I've seen it, and it's reignited. Oil should stay capped, so that should help. Inflation should help growth. In 2 years, he'll lose the House. It'll go to the Democrats, and he'll avoid prison, I think, before becoming president. He'll pardon himself, and the impeachment articles will be laid by the House before the Senate in year 3. So he's got 2 years in which to get everything done. Because after that, lame duck, loses the House, and the Democrats, they hold a grudge. Everything they accuse Trump of, they exhibit themselves. Vindictiveness, bitterness, twistedness, they just mask it better. Which is one of the reasons they lost, because people aren't, so you can fool some of the people some of the time. So what happens is, in 2 years, they go after him. First thing they do, we're going to impeach him. I don't know what on yet. They'll find stuff. Okay, so let's talk stock market. So you see things like this. Trump trades that could see more gain. So what one company did, FactSet, is they go through a whole load of names. Okay, and they said, well, what happened in last time he was elected? These were the gains from November to the year end. And they say, so far, how much of those gains have we had? And what do the analysts think the upside is? So you might say, wow, Caesars must be good, because last time it went up 56%. Analysts think this time there's still 30% left, and it's only gone up 4.3. It's a good theory. I don't like that theory, because when I've gone deeper into these, not particularly got excited for a very simple reason. A Trump trade